Alfano, and this is the Plant-Based Business Hour. Thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it that you're here every day at 1 o'clock so that we can be together to discuss what's going on in the plant-based business world. I do this platform so that investors and consumers together can hear from the leaders who are putting together a safe and plentiful food supply for us. And that, as we know, through coronavirus times, is plant-based food. I've been concerned, in fact, that people perhaps aren't making the connection between plant-based foods and these meat-borne pandemics. So here on this show, we're really focusing on those who are changing the future of food by bringing us a very stable and safe food supply. That's plant-based foods. But it isn't just meat that poses health problems for us. I talk now today with Miyoko Schinner, who is the founder of Miyoko's Creamery. And of course, we love Miyoko's and we live on Miyoko's. Miyoko, thanks for being with me today.
Hey, Elizabeth, it's great to see you and be on your show.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. So, of course, we are sequestered at home with coronavirus, and we're all trying to do the best thing that we can do for our immune system and to stay as healthy as possible. I'm wondering for you if you can tell me what your daily routine has been like at home.
You know, it's been luckily, I feel I'm one of the blessed ones. I live out in the country. I have 17 acres. I have the farmed animal sanctuary here as well. And at the same time, Miyoko's is an essential business. So we're still operating. We're still operating as we were before, except that the office employees are mostly working from home. But I still go in about 3 days a week. I was there yesterday. I do, because someone has to be there from management. So we sort of alternate. So there's usually about 2 or 3 people in the office most days. And then, of course, all of our production, warehouse, sanitation employees are there every single day. So we still have about 80 people there every day.
I have lost your audio. Can you still hear me? Hello, can you still hear me? I have lost your audio. Oh dear. So much of a part, I see that she's frozen. At least she is on my screen. So much of this is a good internet connection, which makes all the difference for us. Miyoko, you might want to try getting out and getting back in. I don't know if she can hear me. Hopefully she can get out and get back in. Well, while we're waiting for Miyoko to come back, we think, let me talk to you a little bit about something called Switch for Good. Let me see. Sorry, everyone. I'm going to see if I can quickly reach out to Miyoko and text her and see if we can get her back online. So hard to find a connection. Maybe you guys who are watching now, can you, oh, Miyoko's going to come back in. Here she is. Okay, Gary, thanks for letting me know that you can hear me. I'm going to throw Miyoko right back in, and we're going to take this like it never happened. Miyoko, let's see if you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I gotcha. We got you back. It was very weird. You dropped off all of a sudden, but we're going to keep going, folks, as if we just roll with it, because these are coronavirus times, so we know how to do that. Yeah. So let me take a step back. You are such an important figure in the world of plant-based dairy, one of the original cheese makers. I cook with Miyoko's mozzarella. I rely on it for pizza. I make, I gotta say, a very wicked asparagus, zucchini, purple potato casserole. Of course, fundamental ingredient is Miyoko's mozzarella. Talk to me about some basics. I'd like to inform people, because not everybody knows, why is dairy harmful?
It is harmful on so many fronts. You know, I just want to share a really quick story, which is that I'm Japanese, and I moved to the United States when I was a little girl, and I was in first grade. And I had to, in the lunch line, I had to grab milk every single day. And I had not grown up with milk. And I didn't like it. I didn't feel good. So I was one of those, you know, I think 70, 80% of the American population that's lactose intolerant. And yet I was forced to drink it. So from a health perspective, there's absolutely nothing in it that benefits humans. Of course, it was designed by nature for calves. But more than that, it's really the cruelty and the sustainability issue that really, really bothers me. I live in agricultural land surrounded by dairy farms, and I see every single day these little white hutches where they isolate calves that are born. As soon as they're born, they're taken away and raised in isolation. And farmers will often tell you that it's for their own good to protect them, because they could get sick if they were to suck on, let's say, a mom's breast that had been lying down in a dirty field or something like that. But the truth is, we all know it's so that we can instead take the milk from the mom rather than giving it to the cow. And the proof for that is because if you look at a cow-calf operation, which is a beef farm, which are also abundant in my area, they never separate the calves from the moms. And when you ask a farmer that and you say, well, why on cow-calf operations do they not separate the calves? The dairy farmer looks at you with blank eyes and says, gee, I never thought about that. And it's because they're not evil people either. They're just taught a certain thing. It's a livelihood, it's a business. They never really thought about it. So when you pose these questions to them, many of them actually go, wow, I never thought about that. That's really, really strange, because they're obviously the same animal. So the cruelty of raising a calf in isolation, the moms bellow, of course, for the cow, for the calf. That is terrible. But at the same time, what I found is that when I talk to omnivores, they say, well, I'm trying to give up meat because it's such a cruel industry. I don't want to have to kill an animal in order to eat meat. And I say to them, well, what if I told you that the same slaughter happened on dairy farms? The dairy farms are also, all dairy cows also end up as hamburger. And it comes as a shock to them. They have no idea of that connection. We have done such a great job of teaching everyone about indoctrinating them with this happy cow myth that all cows are happy just grazing the grass and they live out their lives. And no one thinks about the fact that half of the calves that are born are going to be male, and males don't give milk. So they immediately get turned into veal, or they get turned into, they're auctioned off for cheap meat. Because they're of no use to the industry whatsoever. And then all female cows that have, given milk for anywhere from 4 to 6 years eventually go to the slaughterhouse and are sold as cheap meat. So the dairy cow is the same as, the dairy industry is the same as the meat industry. Actually, it's a lot worse.
It is. There's so much to unpack there. And I want to double up on some of the things that you said. First of all, dairy is the cruelest of cruel industries. Not only are they killed at the end, but they have to be forcibly impregnated, and then their babies are taken from them, and they're very social. So the mothers wail out for the children. The children are then put in isolation, or if you're a male cow, it's even worse because you're in a crate really made for veal, so you can't even move around. But the fundamental business model of dairy is breaking the bond of motherhood. And I'm embarrassed to say, because I fell for it too. I thought all barns were red. I thought all cows smiled and wagged their tail like cartoon characters. I fell for that advertising as well. And what they don't want you to know is that the business is built on breaking the bond of motherhood, because, again, I'm embarrassed to say this, I thought all cows gave milk.
Everyone thinks that.
But
it's not just you. So
cows give milk because they're mothers, not because they're cows.
Yes, they're not a special species, a magical creature that just gives milk. But we've done a great job of convincing everyone that they do.
And then when we move to the health aspect, 65% of Americans are lactose intolerant, much higher in the Asian and African American communities. So we've been sold that this is really a health food, but in fact, casein, which is that addictive animal protein in cheese, as has been outlined by Dr. T. Colin Campbell in the China study, is actually a protein that turns on cancer cells. And so dairy in particular has been noted to, beyond giving cramps and forcing lactose intolerance, but to be potentially very dangerous in terms of cancer. So it's not a health food. I think I can just say that.
No, it's not even when you add probiotics and turn it into yogurt. It's never a health food. And
so one of the things that I think is exciting about this, and I talk about this a lot on the show, it's not a health food. We've been marketed that it is a health food, but plant-based milks are up. I've heard 19%. Sometimes people say 15, but I've also heard 19%, a significant portion of the category. Regular milks are down. Several dairies have folded, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and we hear a lot in the news that they're struggling. And that's because consumers are voting with their dollars and their stomach pain. So they're taking those dollars and they're saying, this does not align with my values and this does not make me feel good. I'm not going to purchase milk. So it's encouraging to me that people are advocating for themselves despite all the dollars spent on advertising. Miyoko, what is your take on the failing dairy industry?
Well, dairy's been plummeting actually since the 1970s. So it's even before plant-based came along, and plant-based milks now represent about 14% of the fluid milk category.
Okay.
But they are growing at about 19-20% a year. So I think that's where you got that figure. And the dairy industry has really, really changed from the time that, Farmer Joe had a few cows in the back in his backyard, and maybe he had a herd of 20, 30 cows. And they all lived their lives out. I met a farmer, actually his name was Joe. He was Farmer Joe. And we rescued his last cow, his calf. And Angel lives at our sanctuary. But I talked to him because he was an old man. And he said back in the day, they kept all their cows until they were 18, 20, 25 years old. And they just sort of lived out their lives. They didn't separate the calves. All of these practices have taken place because of CAFOs and the need to produce more and more, when in fact dairy consumption, milk consumption has declined. However, I have to say that cheese consumption has increased, partly due to mozzarella that's used on pizza. So the average American eats tons and tons of pizza. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. In fact, something like 25% of the population eats pizza almost every day. So there's a huge amount of cheese that's being used now. At the turn of the 20th century, the average American ate something like 4 pounds of cheese a year. Now we eat something like 40 pounds of cheese a year. So it's a multiple of 10. And that's the worst part, because casein, casomorphine, everything all the antibiotics, the hormones, everything gets concentrated in that cheese. So it's absolutely horrible. Back to your question, however, as to why they're failing. They're failing for a number of reasons. One of is actually their own demise due to their own practices, the change in their practices from the way Farmer Joe used to operate as family farms and the milkman delivering the milk to your doorstep. But it's changed. So they have these large conglomerates like Borden and Dean Foods that have both filed bankruptcy in the last couple of months. They have these large conglomerates or cooperatives, and the smaller farmers sell their milk, and they're in over their head with debt to these large conglomerates, and they can't repay the debt. So they borrowed all this money to build their facilities or buy their cows or whatever, and then they can't pay it back, and so they're going bankrupt. So it's not just a couple of dairies. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of dairies shutting down every single year right now. We're talking daily. Not only that, farmers are committing suicide at an all-time high. It is a huge, huge issue. And we're actually at Miyoko's, we have a new program where we're going to be helping and funding a dairy farmer transition to growing crops. That'll become part of our supply chain and our research and development. And we actually, right before COVID set in, we found a farmer in Humboldt County who is interested in doing that. And we've had numerous conversations with him. We were about to go visit him right when the lockdown happened. And so that's been postponed by a little bit. But our goal is to help a farmer transition, to show them that the plant-based foods industry is not the enemy, but we are the solution. We're not saying we want you off your land. We want to provide a solution for you to stay on your land, help transition your animals to safe sanctuaries, to safe harbor, and for you to be able to grow something else that can become part of the new food economy, because that's what's happening right now, is that we are going to have a new food economy. It's not going to be based on animal agriculture. And so you can either become part of that solution or you can become irrelevant. And a lot of farmers are very angry at us, but there are farmers like this guy up in Humboldt County that is willing to transition because he sees the writing on the wall.
It's wonderful news. I've been following what you've been doing with farmers, and I've been hearing about this on the East Coast as well, that people are trying to help farmers transition, because part of that falsehood of childhood fairy tale that they still try to sell to adults is that the farmer is happy and successful alone on his farm. And in fact, most farms are enormous corporations. The small struggling farmer has almost no chance. And in the plant-based industry, a better chance for a financial future for that farmer, not the corporation. We're not talking about the corporation, which is probably going to get bailed out by subsidies, by the way, Borden and Deans and these kind of things. It's a whole other conversation, but it's the subsidies that keep this whole industry propped up, because as we've discussed, sales are down for plant-based milk, for regular milk. But it's the small farmer who, this is a lifeline for them. I'm hearing that many farmers are jumping at the chance to stay on their land and to reinvent their business model so that they actually have a better chance in the future. And of course, as Americans, that's what we do. We're not sitting in rocking chairs knitting in front of the fireplace. We are reinventing the future, because the future of food is plant-based as we go from 7 billion people on the planet to 11 billion people, and we're not getting more land and we're not getting more water. We're going to have to get with the times and have a safer, more sustainable food source, and plant-based food does that. So this is really anyone who's concerned about the American farmer, as we are as plant-based entrepreneurs. This is a lifeline for the American farmer, as I see it.
Well, it's, you know, as you just mentioned, we're not going to get more land, but it's interesting. We actually sort of could, because the elimination of animals from agriculture could actually free up farmland by about 60%. That could be reforested, become a huge carbon sink, and help solve the climate crisis. So in effect, we actually could gain more land if we transition from animals to crops.
Yes, I love that you say this as well. Food, this is why food is so exciting. It touches everything. It touches our health. It touches our culture. It touches our business and our economy, as we see now, as when pandemics have basically locked us in our house, and the jobs unemployment number is going through the roof. And yes, as you say, it touches the environment as well. Obviously, animal agriculture is a major contributor to climate change. And if we don't have to cut down all those trees to graze all those cows, we get land back and can grow the trees that actually suck the carbon out of the air and help us with climate change. Another show as well. Okay, but one of the, it's not going to be as easy as all that. As you say, many farmers are angry, and there's some resistance. And in fact, I think it's Virginia, and most certainly in California. I think you're suing the state of California, aren't you?
We are suing the state of California. We were told, we got a letter saying that we could not use butter, the word butter, and because that was owned by the dairy industry. But actually, what was worse was they said that we had to remove all imagery of animals from our website. Including that of a cow, Angel, who was being hugged by a volunteer at Rancho Compasión. And that we thought that was absurd. And so we paired up with ALDF, Animal Legal Defense Fund, and we sued on the grounds of First Amendment rights violation.
Wonderful. And I think they're, again, doing that in Virginia as well. And I understand that plant-based meats are suing in, I'm going to get the state wrong. I want to say it's Arkansas. It's also...
Yes, Arkansas. There's Alabama. I think there's a number of places.
In a number of places.
Yes, but the Plant-Based Foods Association has been helping with Good Food Institute. So there are a number of places where lawsuits are yes. happening.
Yes, so that you can use the word milk, or you can use the word sausage, because it's strange to me that somebody would make a legal argument that you can't use the word milk, because there's the milk of an onion. There's milk isn't just morning milk in coffee. There are other milks. So it's very strange to me. And when will you have an understanding as to the judgment on that?
Well, it's going to be a while. I think we're going, they asked for an extension to their response. They typically have, I think, 30 days to respond. They asked for an extension, and then COVID happened. So I have to find out exactly what's going on. But, I think our hope is to set a precedent for the entire industry, not just for us. And we did it. We're not the only ones that have been told by California that we couldn't use this terminology. There have been a number of other companies as well. We were the first to file a suit, and we felt, I think a lot of companies just felt like, well, they didn't have the resources. They didn't want to, they didn't want to upset the wagon or whatever. And we just feel that, as I often say, we're not a company with a mission. We're a mission with a company. We're an activist company. We're here for a reason. We're here to overturn animal agriculture and pave the way for a new compassionate, sustainable food system. So it was in our DNA to do something about that. And we're doing it for everybody. We're doing it for the entire plant-based foods industry.
I love that you say that you are a mission with a company, but I will say that mission with a company is very much responding to consumer demand and consumer needs. Plant-based.
Well, you have to.
You have to, of course.
Succeed. I mean, that's the thing, is that, you can go and have your billboard and your little sign and go out there and march and do whatever, or you can, just sell a very niche product at the farmer's market or whatever. But if we're going to change consumer behavior, the only way to do it is to go big and to succeed and create that consumer demand so that it overtakes their desire for animals. If you don't do that, all the shouting in the world, all the lobbying in the world will not get you any further. We have to change consumer behavior.
And consumer behavior wants to change. Again, most people, the majority of Americans are lactose intolerant, which means they can have cramps or they can have asthma, have trouble breathing, be constipated. I mean, it's not how you'd like to go through your day, obviously. So, a lot of people really make the connection that milk does not do a body good and does not feel good. But also at the same time, you are trying to change consumer behavior, but you're also riding a wave. So if these figures are not 100% correct, they are within like a percentage point or two. I've seen from the Good Food Institute that plant-based creamer is up like 63%. Plant-based ice cream.
They had a good year last year.
40%. Yes, and plant-based cheeses are up a lot. In fact, so you could tell us, how much are plant-based cheeses up?
Well, it depends on the year. And so I don't quote me on it. It's not as high as plant-based creamers. They had a great year last year.
Yes.
But I believe it's up somewhere around 30%. But I think we're going to do actually better this year. We're launching new products. There are more and more players in the category. They're just coming out of the woodwork like you would not believe.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you about that. How do you feel about other players in the category? Because you're getting some competition, and you are one of the originals, but it's no longer just a few players.
Well, how many players are there in the dairy cheese category? If you only had 2 or 3 players, you wouldn't have a very large section of the supermarket, would you?
Right.
So, as they say, an empty bakery case doesn't sell. The only way to change the food system is to grow the category, and you can't do that with just one company. So you have to have multiple companies. There will be competition, but there's also going to be collaboration, and there already is collaboration. But we have to grow the whole category and basically have enough products and enough brands that we can overtake the entire dairy case. Otherwise, we're just going to be that alternative little, we're going to have that one little door in a supermarket.
And do you foresee, 1, overtaking the cheese case? And 2, do you foresee plant-based cheeses, or Miyoko's in particular, moving to that cheese case? Because right now we do have that other aisle, and it's annoying.
Yeah, we're often in the produce set, or you're in the so-called alternative cheese, the alternative food set. I think, Beyond was really, really great. And they said, well, you can't have, they told retailers, if you want the Beyond Burger, you have to put us in the meat case. And some retailers do carry it in the meat case. As it turned out, a lot of them decided it belongs in the plant-based set. And so it's going to be a battle for a while, but I think it's where things are merchandised in the store will change over the next 5 to 10 years. The goal, of course, is to end up in the dairy set. Alongside the dairy, the animal dairy products. And this is the reason for that, is that people that are thinking about switching to a plant-based diet really oftentimes have no idea where to go to find the products in the stores. I mean, stores are big, And so if they're looking for cheese, you know, and maybe they want to go plant-based, but they're like, but I can't give up cheese. They're going to go to the cheese case. If in the cheese case they see a plant-based cheese, they might buy that. But if they don't see it there, they probably don't know where to look. And so that, you know, the uptake for plant-based products among by flexitarians or omnivores is going to be slower. And so, you know, it's to our advantage, I believe, to be able to be merchandised in the dairy set along with dairy cheeses.
Yeah, I love that. And I hope that that comes soon. I also hope that technology helps us here. I often feel very frustrated. I go into the grocery store and it's not just the plant-based items that I can't find. It's always extra time and inefficient for me to navigate that grocery store. And I'm looking for soon technology on my phone to be able to point me to plant-based is right over there. Fresh vegetables are right over there. So I'm hoping that technology is going to help us with grocery store. So let's talk about your products specifically. I'm so very excited about this. You have a pepper jack coming out and you have a new cheddar coming out. Tell me about cheddar specifically.
Sure. You know, what's really different is that up until now, all of our products were cashew based, organic cashews. You know, basically our technology is that we make a milk out of whatever substrate we're using. We inoculate it with cultures, with live cultures, and ferment it, drop the pH, transforms the flavor, transforms the texture. And then there's some secondary or tertiary processes that follow that are proprietary. We recognize that a lot of people have cashew allergies, particularly children. Having cashews in a product precludes the product from being served at a school, for example. And we want to be able to reach moms and kids because that's a huge part of the population. So we have innovated these new products that are rolling out this month. In a few
April
days,
6th,
we're start hitting Whole Foods across the country. It'll be, you know, roll out over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But we're launching a cheddar and a pepper jack that are made from a milk that we produce out of legumes and oats. So very similar technology. We first make a milk out of a mix of different legumes and oats, and then we ferment it, and then that gets turned into cheese. And what's amazing about these cheeses is that they have the true functionality of a dairy cheese. I mean, you put them in a grilled cheese sandwich, they get so gooey, it's ridiculous. And they're so rich and unctuous. We've done blind taste tests on kids as well as on adults. We've done these secret pop-ups where adults had no idea they were eating vegan cheese. It's been lots of fun. So these are rolling out at Whole Foods nationwide, as well as some independent retailers, and they'll eventually be on shelves at other stores as well, including large mass market retailers. So definitely look out for those.
I love that you say unctuous. So we're getting unctuous cheese from Miyoko's pepper jack and cheddar that are not made from cashews. But then, of course, if you are a cashew lover and you are not allergic to cashew, you do have an incredible mozzarella. I cook with it all the time. Again, ElysabethAlfano.com for that asparagus, purple potato, and zucchini casserole recipe with Miyoko's mozzarella. But you also have, I'm a big fan of tomato basil cheese that you have, and a garlic cheese garlic chive that you have. So many cheeses to pull from. So I have a question here. You're going to roll out into Whole Foods. Are you also in Trader Joe's, or do you anticipate other stores as well?
Yeah, well, we have a couple of products at Trader Joe's. We're in about 15,000 stores across the country.
It's incredible.
So we do have a couple of products at Trader Joe's. We haven't pitched these items to Trader Joe's yet. You know, we could possibly do that in the future. We believe that right now, because of COVID, there's a lot of retailers are not or postponing launching new products, but Target probably will likely be bringing them on. And there'll be, let's see, there's a whole bunch of others too. I can't remember who they are right now, but they are going to be rolling them out starting May and June.
Yes,
and throughout the rest of the year. Yeah.
So always look for that Miyoko's Creamery. Very distinct packaging. If you happen to have anything, we can do a show and tell. But I will be putting this in the blog post and the notes later, right here on Jane Unchained. And of course, Like always, the Plant-Based Business Hour goes to ElysabethAlfano.com. So I'll be putting some images just in case you need a visual reminder of how to get Miyoko's, but very prominent. Hopefully soon we'll be seeing you in the cheese case, but for sure you can find it in the plant-based case, Miyoko's Creamery. So I'll be looking for that. I really want to try the cheddar. I'm very excited about that. I do want to make a note. We're talking about how dairy is not a health food as it's been marketed to us. And just logically, when you take a step back from the advertising and you think about it, the cow breast milk, and that's what it is, it's breast milk that's intended for a baby cow to make it grow from, oh gosh, 100 pounds at birth, give or take, to 800 pounds at a very rapid pace, probably isn't the right food for you. Just if you kind of think that through, that probably doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So I've talked a lot on the show about the power of the consumer, and that when you use your purchasing dollars to align with your personal values, you will see a shift, because everybody cares about your dollars. You watch TV and you think, oh my gosh, politicians are doing this and that. No, it's really all about your dollars. That's how these politicians are even there. That's how lobbyists are in the spot that they're in. It all comes down to your dollars. So please vote with your dollars. Use your dollars to align with your purchasing power and your values, and you will see a difference. But you also have, in addition to your dollars, you have your vote. So if you would like to see dairy no longer considered a nutritional food suggested by the USDA, perhaps you're someone of color and you have lactose intolerance, or perhaps you're Asian American, African American, or just you're one of the 65% of America that is lactose intolerant. I have put in the show notes, you just have to find it there, put in the show notes the link that you can go to comment on the USDA nutritional guidelines, which are going to be set in May. And you can let them know that you, perhaps, if this is your case, you feel lactose intolerant, it doesn't make you feel good, and that you don't want to see milk and dairy suggested by the USDA as a health food.
Well, so they got rid of that in Canada. You know that, right?
I do know that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Go Canada.
Yeah, it's no longer a requirement. And the interesting thing is, when I was growing up in Japan, of course, there was no requirement to have dairy, but now it is required. They've added that, which is really sad, because the Japanese never consumed dairy until very, very recently.
This reminds me of the bad marketing that men have to them. So it makes no sense that one would market to China and Japan, societies that are lactose intolerant, that they need to be Western and to be cool and to have dairy and feel ill, just like men have to have meat to be manly. But actually, meat causes erectile dysfunction, the opposite of being manly. Heart disease, diabetes, hard to be your strongest and your best when you have heart disease and diabetes. Meat is such a disservice to men, and that ad campaign is such a shame. And it's ridiculous that the same thing would be happening in Asia, I think, now. But we will see, because these COVID times are very interesting, and it is not only a shock to all of us in our healthcare, it's a shock to the business system. I think a lot of people are putting together that meat and dairy are not health foods. In fact, they can be quite dangerous. And we're seeing that right now with COVID-19. So Miyoko, you have been so kind to spend your time with us. I do have some exit questions for you. Some of them are nice and pensive, and some of them are quick one-word answers. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
Oh, gosh. I wish 10 years, well, there's so many things. I think you never stop learning. But, I guess I wish 10 years ago I had had the conviction that I do now, that we actually can change the world, the food system. I think 10 years ago, I was still thinking that I was sort of hitting my head against the wall trying to talk to people about veganism and going plant-based. And I had no idea that the world would change this fast. Had I known, I think I would have probably gotten started earlier in, in this type of activism through business.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I have been in business for many, many years, but just, I just never imagined that it could be where it is today.
And a little bit along the same lines, is there one memory you have, one moment in time when you remember you made the switch in your head and you said, that's it, I'm doing vegan cheese? Is there one particular instance where you just said, I'm shifting?
You know, I've been a vegan for 35 years.
Yay.
So in the very beginning, I was kind of a cheating vegan because I couldn't give up cheese. That was the hardest thing. So I didn't eat cheese very often, but occasionally I would cheat. And I just kept cheating until and there really wasn't much information about how bad dairy was. And I don't remember what that moment was, but when I finally made the connection about, I think it was the babies being taken away. It was like, okay, I can't cheat anymore. I've got to go vegan completely rather than, you know, so. But in terms of the cheese, you know, when I finally decided that I was giving it up completely, oh my gosh, it was hard because I made it sort of, it was like a bucket list for me. I thought one day I have to create vegan cheese. And I will tell you the moment that happened. And I'm going to badmouth my husband, who's in the other room right now. But
Go ahead.
one day he said, I'm tired of not having cheese in the house. And he started buying cheese. And next thing you knew, I had cheese in my refrigerator. And so that was it. I was like, okay, this cannot happen. And that's when I started playing around with vegan cheese. And so I wrote the Artisan cheese cookbook. That was almost 10 years ago. So this is probably about 15 years ago that I started to play around with coming up with plant-based cheeses.
I love this. So it was a line of self-defense. You said, I better start fending for myself, or yes. Yes, I love that you say that. You know, everyone says that cheese is the thing that trips them up, that cheese is the hardest thing to let go of. And I thought it would be for me because pizza, really, as you said earlier on, everyone loves pizza. It's something that Americans have almost every day. I expected for myself that I wouldn't be able to give it up. And I'll tell you, in the beginning, I missed it a little bit, not actually the taste, but that feeling I wanted to participate in pizza, because it's this group. Rarely do you sit down to eat a pizza by yourself, although I've been known to do it. But, you know, it's something you do with friends. And I didn't want to not be a part of that.
Everyone's that way. Yeah.
But then I broke and I had pizza and I was so sick that I never went back, because once I got it out of my system, I realized, yikes, this makes me feel awful. So I was happy to leave it behind. I'm wondering, if you're having a bad day and you're running around and just things aren't going the way you would like, if you have one phrase that you say to yourself to get yourself back in your Miyoko groove. For example, I say, nose to the grindstone, eyes to the sky.
Oh, you know, for me, it's just recognizing how much gratitude I have for my life. Even if things are going wrong, the fact is I have the opportunity to change the world. I have the opportunity to contribute my talents to make the world a better place. And I am so grateful that I have been given that opportunity.
I love that you say that. I'm actually grateful that I'm living in a time where I'm going to see cataclysmic change. It's like we're living in the time of the automobile. I feel that we in the plant of changing, you know, from the horse and carriage to the automobile, you know, people didn't think that would be possible. How could you ever build roads? That means we'd have to tear things up, etc. Look, we would never go back. You would never type on a typewriter today. You have something called a computer. You wouldn't stand in line for a stamp. You use something called the interweb. So change is possible. And we in the plant-based world are living through that. And in my lifetime, I'm going to see the demise of meat and dairy. I really do believe that.
Yes, but you know, the big difference between changing the world to a plant-based one and getting rid of the typewriter and replacing it with a computer is that there's an ethical component. It has to do with who we are as human beings, and the fact that we have to evolve as a species to become more caring, more compassionate, and kinder. And so that's what veganism is about. It's about our personal evolution. It's about our own individual change. That you can't say that about, you know, the horse and buggy and the automobile has nothing to do with who we are as individuals, but veganism does. And that's why this is the most exciting time in human history, because the revolution that's happening right now is not just the Industrial Revolution, it's the human revolution.
Yes, it is the social justice movement of our time. I love that you say that. I have another quickie question for you. So you're running around very busy. What is your go-to snack?
Oh gosh, I'm Japanese. We usually have leftover rice. I love onigiri, or rice balls.
Oh.
So if I'm like really hungry, I'll just like get a scoop of rice, wrap it, sprinkle a little salt on it, and wrap it in nori.
And nothing in the middle.
Sometimes I'll just eat it like that. Sometimes avocado. I'll put avocado in it. I like that too. My other go-to snack is a banana with peanut butter.
Well, who would say no to that?
Yeah.
I'll tell you very funny. For the first time, I made rice balls at home last night. So
it
was very fun. Yes, they fell apart. It didn't work, but I tried.
Okay, well, there's a trick to that. And you have to use, are you using short grain rice? Because it won't work with long grain.
I thought I was using short grain rice. Okay. I think I made them too big.
Well, no, you can make big ones. The trick is you have to get your hands wet. You put the rice in your hands like this, put a little salt on it, and then you form them like this into a triangle. And you just keep squeezing like that. Okay. And then it holds together, and then you wrap it. So that's how you do it.
Okay, I'll do that again. I made them with avocado and jalapeno. So that was my, it was super good. Okay, and do you have a go-to meal that you can make really fast? It's your, like, you have it at least once a week. You always make it. You always rely on it.
No, I'm sorry. We never eat the same thing once a week. So, I mean, we're just kind of like mixing it up all the time. But yeah, there's lots of quickie things. But you know, they're probably pretty standard. I'm a very simple eater at home, for the most part. Lots of veggies, grains, and beans. But yeah.
Yeah, hard to go wrong with grains and beans. Gosh. And then my last question for you is: we've talked about the demise of meat and dairy, or let's say the rise of plant-based foods, and the evolution of us as a culture. As we realize, I do think in our lifetime, our grandchildren, younger generations will say, can you believe that they tortured animals for food? Can you believe they did that? I really think it will be part of the cultural conscious that that's just an unheard of thing and a bizarre thing, as it is, a couple decades from. I do believe in my lifetime. I do think that. But beyond that, what are your predictions for the future?
Oh, I'm just full of hope. I really do believe that we're going to change. This is the pivotal point when things are going to change. I think COVID is a really horrible time for people, but if we can see this as our opportunity to make change, it's going to happen faster and faster. So I'm very hopeful for the future of a vegan world.
Yes, I am too. And I love that you say that. We are in a period of change. Best not to resist it, because that's not helping us. Go with it. This is our time to make personal change, to relook at our food safety, to look at our food sources, and think about what is best for us, what makes us feel safe, what makes us feel good. Nobody wants to walk around with a stomachache all the time. So if you're lactose intolerant, no need to force it. Move over to plant-based milks, move over to plant-based cheese. Miyoko is rolling out in Whole Foods across the country over the next couple of weeks with her cheddar and pepper jack. But even right now, you can get her butter, you can get her mozzarella, you can get her cheese spreads, garlic and chive and tomato, and wonderful, wonderful options. You can always just go to miyokos.com. And of course, if you missed any part of this or any of the plant-based business hours, you can always go to elysabethalfano.com and see all of the archived interviews. I am here every day, weekdays, 1 p.m., right here live on Jane Unchained. I'm Elysabeth Alfano. It's a plant-based business hour. Miyoko, thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. It was a pleasure to be on your show.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.